coming. Paul, thank you. Paul, good. All right, we're going to start our second talk. Just quickly, coming up, looking ahead, I put lava flyers out. Coming ahead, September 15th, which is in 2 weeks, I think. 2 Sundays from today. We are going to be at Angel City Brewery, which is at First and Alameda. When it was the Roebling Company, the wire cable manufacturing company, the employees commissioned Ernst Pachelder to make some custom tile for the lobby. The lobby of the Roebling building is now a back office that is not publicly accessible, so you wouldn't see it if you go there to the brewery. But it's there. We're going to go in, and our friend Brian Kaiser is going to give a talk about Ernst Pachelder's work, specifically in the context of this custom commission and how it impacted his later work. It's a little known Pachelder tile. It's really interesting, and that's our next event coming up on lava. And then in October 10th, we have a walking tour and a screening at the Union Rescue Mission. Thursday, October 10th at 5:30, Reverend Andy Bales, who's the director of the Union Rescue Mission, Nathan Marsak and I will give a 90-minute walking tour about the history of the Union Rescue Mission in downtown. We're going to go to their first 2 locations, the first of which is now the lawn of City Hall, the second of which is a parking lot next door to St. Viviana's, and then we're going to walk on San Pedro back to the Union Rescue Mission, and around the 3rd we switch from the history of the Union Rescue Mission, which extends over 100 years, to the present day and the Union Rescue Mission, and it's a great event. About 45 minutes after our talk, when it's dark, on the roof of the Union Rescue Mission, we show the half-hour film of Scrap and Steel. 30 minutes, shot on location, 2nd of May, 1949, commissioned by the Union Rescue Mission about the Union Rescue Mission. It's in color. If you want to know what Skid Row looked like in 1949, come to this film. They're both free. You just have to register. It's on the lava site. I know, Flannery, you're excited. It's exactly as fantastic as you think it is. Okay, so please register. We're going to open registration. It's on the site. We're going to open it about 2 weeks out. Put it in your calendars. We're really excited. Carlton, thank you. This is my friend Carlton. Take it away.
Well, from the sublime to the prosaic. I'm Carlton Davis.
You're going to talk into the microphone.
Oh, talking to the microphone. I'm Carlton Davis, also known as Carl Davis. I was the creator and curator of the Art Doc, the Drive-By Art Gallery. And today I'm going to talk to you about that gallery and the downtown LA art community as it existed in the 1980s. Downtown LA, at the cusp of the 1980s, was a really gritty place. At 6 or 7 o'clock, downtown emptied out as all the office buildings, workers in the office buildings went home. The only people left were some elderly housing living on Bunker Hill, the homeless who lived everywhere, and I don't have shots of these. One luxury housing project, which is over near 3rd Street and Figueroa, and a series of SRO hotels along Skid Row, and then a smattering of houses around the southern edge of downtown. It was into this empty space, basically, that artists came. They came and they rented, they got master leases, and in some cases bought vacant warehouse buildings in an area that extended east of Broadway, north of 9th Street, extending all the way to the LA River. Now, one of the things you have to remember about the loft spaces that they started to build then, it was all totally illegal. It was not legal to live in non-residential buildings at that time. Now, the first wave of artists who came were a group who called themselves the Young Turks. And their movie has recently been re-released. The filmmaker was Stephen Seamer, you see here. Others of those was Linda Fry Burnham, who started High Performance Magazine, and also was the editor of the Art Documents. And it included Andy Wolf, who was probably the most recognized artist in downtown at that time. Mark Kreisel, who owned Dallas Bar, who managed to not get his name on this. And John Peterson, a sculptor, who became a very successful artist housing developer and walked away from downtown with a lot of money. Now I was in the second wave of artists who came downtown. I took a loft at the building called the Citizens Warehouse. Today the city refers to it as the Pickle Factory, after its first use in 1888. But when I went there, it was called...
Are the fermenters for the pickles still there?
What?
Are the fermentation vats for the pickles?
They're still there. They're still in the basement. The Citizens Warehouse was a big building, and I took a 1,600 square foot space in that, where I created the drive-by gallery, and it existed from 1980 to 1986. Now that building was actually owned by a group of artists and their investors. My loft, which you see a sketch of there, I used to have a chair that I would sit in behind the loading dock door and would watch the sun set over the building west of me. And one day, a group of artists and myself were sitting in the dock in the sun, and a car drove by and thought we were an exhibit. This gave me the idea, hey, this could be an art gallery. And we said, what a perfect idea for a city that has drive-ins, drive-throughs, drive-bys. Why not a drive-by art gallery? Now, I started this as a joke. I did not think this gallery would last more than a couple of months. But like all good movements, I thought I had to write a manifesto. So I got a lady named Jane Gaskell, who was 6'5", and was a member of a band called Giant Jane in the Cage, a punk band. And I wrote this manifesto, which is very tongue-in-cheek. It was about standardization, distribution, volume, marketing, and cost, which were big issues then in the whole art world. It was also about Los Angeles and loading docks as a metaphor for consumer capitalism. Because it is through loading docks that all the goods are loaded and unloaded and go to the city. It's where where galleries load their works and take them out to collectors. You know, it's where the lofts load them onto trucks that go to the museums and all that stuff. So we thought that a loading dock was a perfect metaphor. Now, when I got through the whole experience of doing this project, I realized that it really fell into 4 segments. And the first segment I called Act 1, the manifesto. And in this one, I had to find somebody to exhibit in my drive-by gallery. I got an artist by the name of Fritz Hubnet to exhibit here in the fall of 1981, mainly because I made a bet with him if I could beat him in ping pong, he would show in my stupid gallery. And he lost. I got him. Now you can see the piece it is. It was made out of 2 pieces of timber suspended from the ceiling, of which all kinds of metal hung on, painted metal. It's not a very good picture, because at that time I wasn't doing any professional photography. Fritz was an artist who lived in the building, and he collected all kinds of pieces of junk, metal, wood, along the rail tracks behind our building and anywhere he could find them, and he would assemble them into sculptures. They were really quite marvelous. And that's a picture of him with one of his pieces at that time. Now, many years later, Fritz left the art world and and became a doctor of Oriental medicine. The third show I had in Act One, the manifesto, was called Christ Among the Vagrants. Jan Taylor, who also lived in this building, said, well, you know, your art gallery's never open. I said, well, of course, I only open it when I'm here and I have a job. And so he said, I'm up in the ante. He mounted a cross on the outside of the building with all these neon tubes on it. It was really quite beautiful. You could see it from way down Santa Fe. No, it was really quite fun. But immediately, the owners of the building came to me and said, you've got to take it down. You know, it's going to draw the authorities to our legal building, and it's going to attract the homeless who's going to think it's a mission. And I said, well, wait a minute, let me see if I can get a permit for it. So I went to the city of Los Angeles, and going from apartment to apartment, I found that if you called this a Christmas ornament, I didn't have to get a permit. So I called it a Christmas ornament, and it stayed up, and in subsequent years, I hung it every year for about 3 years. This is a sketch I did of my part of the Citizens Warehouse. My loft is the one here in the middle that's yellow. To the far side over there was Jan Taylor's. Jan loved to go out and play urban golf, where he would knock rocks from the empty streets. Then he would stop afterwards at a truck that was unloading shellfish into the National Cold Storage, and he would buy all kinds of oysters, and then he would invite the artist back to have steamed oysters in his loft. Below him lived Mark Kreisel, who owned the house bar. And on the other side of me was an artist named Gary Lloyd, who taught exercise and drew a lot of people here. And he made sculptures out of meat. I'm not going to get into a long explanation of that. It's explained in the book. But what was also really interesting about Center Street, throughout the whole time that I did the art doc and after, was that this street was used by Hollywood as a set. You couldn't go outside your loft door on any day when it wouldn't have a Chicago, New York, or some other city police car parked right in front of your door. You could never tell whether a homeless person was actually an actor or a homeless person. And one time, on the side of the building, for a thing called Mike Hammer, was a program, they built a discotheque, a phony discotheque. And the Hill Street Blues used to use the doorway at the far end of the building as their precinct headquarters. So this is very active street. A lot of stuff going on. It was an exciting place to be. Now the fourth installation in the art doc was by Mark Kreisel, and he called it First Functional Painting. He took a lot of photos of the Wailing Wall, stapled them up to a cut piece of drywall, and then in front of it, he placed the boots and the Kaiser card of Andy Wolf. Andy Wolf had died several weeks before this installation was placed. This was supposed to be a memorial to him. Well, a lot of people took issue with that, and Mark got into several fights in front of the art doc about him doing this. Andy, several weeks before his death, was lying there in the art doc, stretched out in the sun. So, here you see a picture of Mark Kreisel in front of Al's bar, a photograph done by Gary Leonard. You see a painting by Andy Wolf. Andy Wolf at that time was the most famous artist in downtown. He had gotten the LACMA Young Talent Award. He painted all these grotesque heads of severed animals that he found in Grand Central Market. And he also did paintings of Ku Klux Klan members and all that kind of stuff. They were very weird and shocking paintings. They were big, too. So the downtown art scene in 1982 was very exciting. There was a lot going on. Here you see Bride and Groom by Kent Twitchell on the Victor Clothing Building on Broadway. That building, on all the upper floors, were artist lofts. The top one was Linda Burnham. Rachel Rosenthal, the performance artist, lived there. Andy Wilf lived there and died there. And Lace, Los Angeles contemporary exhibitions, was there. It was really a focus of the art community. They did a lot of very avant-garde and performance art. Over here, you see a painting, wall painting by Kent Twitchell, which was on Central Avenue. That painting has now been lost, unfortunately. Well, the seventh installation in the Art Doc, speaking of your Kundalini rising, this was a piece by Scott Greiger, which was a flaming spine where your Kundalini was on fire up your spine. And he took a big transparency, taped it into a big black piece of photographic paper, and he mounted it in the Art Doc. He only wanted it shown at night. And Scott, who's now, I think, still one of the directors of the Otis Art Institute, placed that piece here. And what I found was artists started to experiment with this gallery because it was kind of an alternate space. Nobody really knew about it except the artists. So they would try out ideas. This piece went on to be shown at Otis and several places on the west side. Now the 10th installation and the last installation in what I call the manifesto was by Gary Lloyd. He called it Locations for Work. He painted a map of the environs of the building on the door, the roll-up door of the Art Doc. And he put these dots. These dots were to locate places in the neighborhood that he felt created interesting views. And I prevaricated upon him and I said, well, can't you do something more? And so he placed a piece that he had made called Defense Spending, which was made out of coin. Here you see a cutout of that work. That work was stolen from the Art Doc. It was stolen from the Art Doc. Gary Lloyd, we managed to get the TV people interested in it, and they made a presentation briefly, I think with 5 o'clock news on ABC, where they talked about contemporary art being stolen, and who'd ever heard of that? Who'd ever want to steal contemporary art? They couldn't give it away. But here was Gary pleading for the return of his piece called Defense Spending, and you see it over here, which was a fireman's axe, as if the fireman's axe had been made out of meat covered with coins. Now the piece, someone saw this program in East LA where they'd been offered the sculpture in the street. So that caused the police to take some interest. So they were driving around East LA for a while with this picture of defense spending on their dashboards.
Well, what is the piece made out of?
It's made out of, well, it's armatures, you know, wire mesh.
Okay, it's not really meat.
No, it's not really meat.
Okay.
The whole story of the meat you have to read the Art Document, how he evolved that whole idea. You know, he cut out some meat, got it radiated, and put it in some underground thing in UCLA where you can only view it through a photograph. This is a rendition of it.
What was the piece found? Did the LAPD recover?
LAPD was driving around East Los Angeles. They saw it mounted above a fireplace in a house in East LA. They staked out the house and they caught a gang who had been stealing all kinds of appliances and recorders. And then the piece was impounded for almost 5 years down in San Diego, in the legal case. Well, I thought this was going to be the end of the Art Doc. I mean, who'd want to show in a gallery where your work got stolen? The exact opposite was true. I was besieged by people who wanted to show in this crazy idea of mine for a drive-by art gallery. So that began what I called Act 2 of the Art Doc, the community gallery. And this was the 11th installation, and actually the first installation of Act 2. It was by Karen Kristen. It's called Wolf at the Door. Now, at this time, you have to know that the city of Los Angeles passed an ordinance legalizing artists in residence. But that ordinance said at that time, the artist had to comply with the housing code, which meant parking requirements, all kinds of requirements for, bathrooms and ventilation. None of the artists had ever followed any of these things when they designed their loft. They just did whatever they felt like. And there were lofts that had toilets in the middle of the room with nothing around them. Well, so Karen made a piece that was sort of in response to that. Karen was a set painter in Hollywood, how he made a living. So she suspended these styrofoam blocks in the Art Doc, painted to look like marble. And that is an I Ching. That I Ching is about risk and, I can't remember the other word, possibility. And in the midst of it, she located the head of a wolf who represented the forces against the arts. And in front of it, she located a bowl of golden nuggets. Now this is significant because Los Angeles councilman at that time, Joel Wax, had stated that the artists were going to be the golden nuggets, leading people back into downtown. So, in spite of this,
Carlton, so Joel was one of the people that passed that ordinance.
Yes.
The adaptive reuse ordinance.
yes,
So
Artists in residence.
Artists in residence.
Yeah.
Right, and he was the one that eventually you didn't have to comply with the housing. He sort of fixed
it
all.
got changed later on in the
Right.
It got adapted.
Did someone steal the nuggets?
No, no one stole the nuggets.
Fail.
Well, the 12th installation I had here was by Miles Forrest. And there was all this upset in the community. Miles decided to come in with this very restful piece. He was going to put in the Art Doc a Jewish harvest hut, a sukkah. And he put in a hammock and a little table where you could sit and have drinks. And when I saw this, I flipped out. I thought, I'm going to have all these homeless people living in his hammock in my loft. One of my rules was, you can do anything you want, just don't interfere with me living in my loft. And he'd done it. So, well, nothing like that happened. But what did happen was that the city inspectors came by as they started to be in the neighborhood a lot in those days, and they saw this and they said, this is a fire hazard, it has to go. So I went back to City Hall this time, through many, many departments, and I discovered that you called this a work of art, and it was for sale, you didn't have to fireproof it. So I came back, I put a sign outside the Art Doc. It subsequently blew away. It's not with the price of $32,000. Well, no one ever took me up on it. There's a picture of Miles, who's since passed on, and his girlfriend at that time, Monique Safford, who you'll be seeing in a few minutes in her piece. So the downtown I'd seen in 1983 continued to be as wild and woolly as it was in 1982. On the right, you see Dustin Schuyler, who pinned an airplane to the outside of the American Hotel, which had Al's Bar in it. That building still exists today. The hotel is a place where artists would come and take a very small room for very little money, and then scope out the whole neighborhood to find a loft that they could live in. And Al's Bar was really the heart of the community. It's where the artists hung out. It's where all these punk bands and all kinds of weird bands played. I'm not into that, so I didn't go there that much. And over here is Exile Gallery, which was on Winston Street, next door to the American Indian Mission, in an alleyway. That alleyway was always full of drunk Indians. And so they started a gallery. It was started by artists. Artists lived above. That building has now been totally renovated. Now, it once was a Canadian embassy, Canadian consulate in Los Angeles. Here you see the artists who started Exile Gallery, Linda Burnham, who I mentioned before, Gary Warrell, who also showed in the Art Doc, and I'm not showing you his piece at the moment because I'm only showing you a few. And Gary Warrell. Gary Warrell now lives in Northern California. So, the community gallery continued, had a 15th installation, and it was by Monique Safford. It was called Bless Me in '83. She found a big photographic transparency in the trash somewhere, to which she attached those letters. And there was a whole sort of upset feeling going on in the neighborhood. Would we survive? Would we not? You know. And then, the big event that happened was that Peter Ivers, the host of a cable TV show, was bludgeoned to death in his loft on 3rd Street. This crime has never been solved. But the most paranoid of artists said that he was killed by the developers who wanted to force the artists out. Well, no, we'll never know one way or the other. But what happened was, a lot of these artists got together, and the LA Reader declared in July of 1983 that the loft scene was dead. It was all over. I was quoted, I showed the Art Doc. I made some statements that I didn't think this was really going to happen, but there were other artists who said they were going to defend their lofts till their death. They were going to go on the roof armed and fight off the police. It was quite bizarre. But it never really happened. No. What happened was that everything continued on. And here you see a piece by an artist named Pamela Burgess. You see a photograph over there. And she installed her piece called Searching, which was a big triangle with a hole in the middle, and then this spine-like form curving around it. I mentioned before that artists started to use the Art Doc to test out ideas. This was Pamela's test of some ideas that she was developing at that time. She later abandoned this. I thought it was a very lovely idea. Well, to the fall of 1983, I was getting tired kind of some of the controversy surrounding the Art Doc and surrounding the whole nature of the LA downtown art community. So I traded my loft for another artist, and I went and lived at Venice Beach for 3 glorious months. And before I left, though, I decided to have a performance done by Ulysses Jenkins, which was called Without Your Interpretation. Now this performance is probably the only piece from Art Doc that still survived. This piece became a videotape, was shown in the Hammer Museum about black art in Los Angeles, and was subsequently shown earlier this year in PS 21 in New York. So, I came back from my hiatus at the beach, and it was 1984. And we were really into the LA Olympics. And LA wanted to prove that it was a great cultural center. So you could do almost anything in art, and it would get some notoriety. So, I had, my first show was by an artist named Bob Gibson. It was called Between the Heartbeats. Bob lived in a little loft over near Rose Street, which was full of broken glass. He liked to work with broken glass. Pieces of that broken glass on there. Nothing really major transpired during this exhibit, but after it, Bob fell from a scaffolding in front of the building of the Temporary Contemporary and ended up for 9 months in a body cast. And subsequent to that, he just disappeared from the art community. So, in 1984, I made this sketch of what I saw as the art community. It looks a little bit like a Jeff Koons balloon dog. You know. The Art Doc is up there in the head. The Al's Bar is down there near the heart. A place called Galleria by the Water was down below Skid Row. All those black dots in there are galleries that started to come into downtown. The Temporary Contemporary is on the back of the dog, and the tail is where they were building the new MoCA. Now the red is Skid Row. And so that was really the ass end of the dog. So there was a lot of Olympic art. Here you see the 7th Street altarpiece, which is done by Ken Twitchell, Lita Albuquerque. This piece is in restoration, although it was moved from one location to another. Frank Romero's piece, going to the Olympics, which was on the Hollywood Freeway in downtown, got heavily covered with graffiti over the years, and finally Caltrans painted it out. Now there's a move to restore it, but I don't know if that'll happen. But, so, my 25th installation in the Art Doc was a piece by Brett Goldstone called The Fountain. Now, Brett Goldstone was quite well known in downtown at this time as Art Attack. He put art all over buildings and here and there anonymously. Nobody quite knew who he was. He found a water heater near the beach, and then he put it in the Art Doc, put these 3 figures that moved back and forth, welded onto it all kinds of sticks and spinners and, you know, bowls, and then water poured out this thing and dribbled out onto the street and sprayed. When you walked by, you got sprayed with it. It was really quite wonderful because it was over 100 degrees in Los Angeles that time. Now, what happened here was that the whole relationship with building inspectors had begun to change. They were becoming more helpful rather than just saying, if you don't do this, you're going to get kicked out. They were trying to find ways to help the artists stay where they were. And one day the plumbing inspectors came by, saw this piece, and they put a little tag in there that said, illegal plumbing, and Rube Goldberg. So here's Brett. And Brett built his piece while living in the street, on Center Street, on the back of his truck. You know, he just put a tent up and then kept working on the piece in the Art Doc. Brett is an interesting character. He comes and goes from New Zealand, where it was from. Latest I know, he's coming back from New Zealand. He was there for a number of years. during the time of the Art Doc, I did daily diaries each day, and I would do drawings of them. This is one of my favorite ones of the fountain. So, what was beginning to happen at this time is the whole character of the neighborhood and the art community was beginning to change, because the temporary contemporary, which is now called the Geffen, opened, and it had this major show called Automobile Culture during the Olympics. And here you see a painting by Carlos Alvarez, who was a Los Angeles artist. And so the emphasis started to be not on artists, but on art. And here you see a picture of a show that was at Lace of Zamsdad art, which was Soviet dissident art. And if you all remember, the Soviets boycotted the Los Angeles Olympics. Well, I had so much fun during this phase of the Olympics that I decided, wait a minute, maybe I can make a business out of a drive-by art gallery. Well, I soon discovered that that idea was rather ridiculous. And it really became because of this show by Soren Crow called Dissolving Views. I went and I invited the entire art world to the opening of Dissolving Views. We had the most beautiful invitation. And I got all these responses from the papers, the art critics, collectors, museums, all going to come by. Now, Soren had spent more than 3 weeks building a white cube in the Art Doc, painted white with 24 coats of paint. On the night of the opening, the art never arrived. I was totally embarrassed. I was telling people, luckily there was a show down the street at Michael Solaner's AAA Art, who were showing Paul McCarthy's drawings, and they went down there. And I was talking with the artist, who my relationship with was fast deteriorating, and he said, no problem, nobody ever looks at the art in an opening anyway. 3 weeks later, Soren installed what was really a really wonderful piece. You really can't see it from this photograph. It was made out of anodized aluminum, copper plate, reflective discs, and a glass bar. It stood in front of it. It really was lovely. Soren said that if you stood in front of it for a while, you'd get cross-eyed like a Buddhist. Well, he sold that piece to the CRA, Community Redevelopment Agency in Los Angeles. And that's a whole other saga of him installing it there. He never gave me a nickel from that sale. Well, continue on. My 32nd installation was by Alexis Moore, called Still Life, Life Still, where she did kind of a conceptual piece of these white rocks attached to ropes to the ceiling, and then a statement about where she found the rocks, and uninterrupted laughter, etc., etc. It was really quite lovely. What I loved about the Art Doc is people would interact with it. It wasn't like you go to the museum and you go, don't touch that, don't touch that. People would come in and they would add a rock. They would do something to it. They would interact with it. And here you see another one of my daily diary sketches that I did of that piece. This was the second to last installation in the Art Doc, and one of my favorites. It was by Neil Taylor and Drew Lesso, called 5 Installations. And the first one was on Halloween. The installation is by Neil. The music was by Drew Lesso. And they had a tape recorder playing an endless loop of nails being driven in and pulled out of a coffin. I had to listen to this for 5 nights. for art then. The fifth installation I did was called Means to a Natural Order. Here you see the installation by Neil and the musical score by Drew. Drew bases his music on harmonics, mathematical relationships. He would do all these diagrams of the relationships between these pieces in the art doc and then make music from it. He was also a student of Stockhausen, and you know who Stockhausen, very famous avant-garde composer. Well, this piece, which has a painting of a sky, an I Ching, and a pile of leaves, and then some coal dust. Outside, coal dust caused another controversy. But the leaves were there, and one day I was in my studio, and I heard a person outside say, "What if I threw a match into those leaves?" Which immediately brought me out from inside my loft. And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You have to close the art doc. We're filming a film here." I said, "No way." He said, "They offered me $10. They offered me $20. $50 no. $100 no. $200. I decided I'd close the art doc. That $200 is the only money I ever made from the drive-by art gallery. And I got it to be closing. So, the art doc closed in 1986, and really what happened was that MoCA and art institutions became the focus of the community. The Citizen Warehouse, where I lived, was closed in 2004, and the city took 70 feet off the end, demolished it, to build the Gold Line over in East LA. But in the meantime, as years passed, the city of Los Angeles created the Arts District. And here you see it, third attraction today with a mural by Shepard Farley. And we started to have art fairs and people coming to the community now. The original artists started to get priced out. They couldn't afford to develop loss. And that's still an issue today. So, but still, the downtown LA art community moves on. It's all over the place, different places. It's changed characters. There's a lot of galleries. I can't go by any floating dock anywhere and not think of its potential to be an art gallery. This was a photograph by Julian Beckman, a downtown photographer, who took images of loading docks on Central Avenue. So, in conclusion, I want to tell you that Art Doc was really about artists, and is inspired by the quote by Marcel Duchamp, who said, "I believe in artists, not in art." So today, this is Los Angeles. Today there are 50,000 plus people living in downtown. When I moved there were probably less than 5,000. So, artists were the golden nuggets who brought people back to downtown. Thank you very much.
Carlton, let's get some questions. You can fuss with that in a minute. I know are there any questions? Hands?
No, I want to say something.
Yes.
So, 82, I graduated from high school. I'm going off to art college. I live here in LA, and so where do I go wandering around? It's downtown LA, and I do remember a bit of the art doc. My mom and I drove around, all around, and took pictures and stuff. I remember the airplanes stuck on the side of the building and stuff, so it's a pleasure getting to see you and meet you. And so remembering all this fun stuff. And it was funny because we were at Angel City Brewery, and the dock that's on the side of the building there that they have on Alameda, and I was thinking, they should make that a gallery on the side of the building, and I was inspired again by that, and so I just wanted to say thank you for having done that.
We're lucky to find the Art Doc. It wasn't, not everybody
No,
could find
so we
it.
drove everywhere. We drove all over the place because we both love to photograph old buildings and things and like art. And then it was just like, and it must have been some of the ones where it would occasionally open in the daytime or on a weekend or something like that. And I don't remember specific, then looking at your photographs, and maybe if I look at the book, something will spur a moment, but I remember something about a dock looking like an art gallery.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have to step out for a minute, so I'm sorry I missed part of the lecture, for which I blame technology.
Yeah.
But I just noticed at the last that you had a slide that showed that the Citizens Warehouse
Yes.
is different than the Art Doc.
No, the Citizens Warehouse is the building within which the Art Doc was.
Okay.
It was a loading dock of the Citizens Warehouse.
Like this young lady, I had a friend who moved in to a dock situation in about 1980, I think 84, and on Santa Fe somewhere. I remember going over to visit. I didn't wander around too much, although I've been all over the general area. But they had this enormous space vertically. And what they had done is they had actually installed, besides the bottom floor, they had a series of lofts that went up to the corner, which culminated in this little 10 by 10 foot platform. The floor space was maybe 800-900 square feet, something like that. But it was enormous vertical space. Do you recall any lofts that would fit
Might have been in the brewery.
Sorry?
Might have been in the brewery. I know they had some very tall loading dock doors. There are a lot of tall loading dock doors around downtown Los Angeles. You have to really want them on the plan.
Become of the dock itself, the building
What?
itself. Did you explain what has become of the building? What has become of that dock?
Well, the building at the moment is vacant. As a matter of fact, we had a tour of it yesterday. The city refers to it
We tried
as...
to give a tour, Carlton, they wouldn't let us in.
They wouldn't let us in.
Very sad.
They call it the Pickle Factory because it was originally a pickle factory. A whole lot of us are trying to save the building. It is actually on the National Registry as for warehouses of this kind because it is probably the last remaining brick and wood warehouse in downtown Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles specifically. And it's had a long history, and I think a very interesting history as an artist housing. Aside from my loft, there are a lot of well-known artists who lived there. Judd Fine, John McCracken, several others I can't remember who've lived there over the years.
Was it abandoned after 86?
No, it was abandoned. It was closed up by the city in 2004 when they bought the building to build the Gold Line extension over the bridge to East LA, and they kicked all the artists out. Building's been closed up since then. City wants to demolish it. We're fighting that because of its historic quality and its history. So we're working on it.
Send money.
Then, any other questions? I will be signing copies of the Art Documents. Special price today, $25, including tax. And if any of you are interested, I'll be right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you'll be right there. Good. Good. Thank you. I think in about 15, 20 minutes we're going to start my Broadway walking tour. So I'm going to run downstairs real fast. How many people are here for the walking tour? Good. Okay. I have the sign-up sheets are right there. I printed out 2 copies. So if you want to be proactive, find your name, sign it now, get it out of the way. In about 10 minutes, we'll reconvene and we'll start talking. We're going to leave by 2:35 because we're going to go straight over to the Dutch chocolate shop, the Ernst Bachelder. Yeah, they've opened it up for us. So that's our surprise for the day.
Okay.
Yes, Gene?
Can you talk about next month's Salon?
Yes, thank you. Before we go, I was going to do that. Before we go, so I talked about the Union Rescue Mission walking tours at the break. You're going to come to that, right, Flannery?
Of course.
Good, good. The person that our friend Brian Kaiser is going to meet us at the Dutch chocolate shop as soon as we start the Broadway walking tour. Brian has an event with us at Angel City Brewery, which Carlton mentioned in this talk, about Bachelder Tile. So Bachelder Tile is a big theme. And then, thank you, Gene, next month is September, and the September Salon will feature Kim's friend Paul Kay.
Kudneris.
That's right, Paul Kudneris. Paul Kudneris has presented at Lava before on his previous book. Paul will talk about his current book. He's gone around Eastern Europe and photographed encrusted skeletons as reliquaries. And it's really fun. His book's called Empire of Death.
That's his first book.
Yeah, and it's just, Paul's amazing. And it's going to be a great book about medieval funerary reliquaries. And it's just, I'm very excited. And then our other talk will be by our good friend Joan Renner, and she's going to talk about the hard-boiled, hard-hitting reporter and city editor Aggie Underwood. Aggie Underwood was a very important city editor in immediate post-war Los Angeles. She came up as a reporter before World War II. Aggie Underwood famously was promoted to city editor by William Randolph Hearst, and some people say because she knew who killed the Black Dahlia. I don't think that's true, but Aggie's career was very much got a big kick because of the crisis of Beth Short's investigation, the failed investigation into Beth Short's murder, and Aggie is a big part of that. She had every gangster's phone number. Joan never disappoints, so there'll be two great talks about. I guess Joan's talk's kind of about death because, Kim, tell us what Aggie's favorite job was.
What's
Her nice little dress.
Oh.
Yeah, both these talks will be about death.
Yeah, Aggie had a problem. She tried to be a lady, but it was really hard because she was always chasing criminals. So she had this brown wool dress that she really liked, and she unfortunately would always end up around putrefying corpses in this dress, and it was really, really hard to get the scent out. And she always did until finally there was an incident where a man and a woman were having some sort of assignation, as you do, on a couch, and the gas malfunctioned and they were both killed. And so the reporters are outside this little love nest peeping in, and there's these two corpses and the gas has been turned off, so it is safe to go in. They want to get an identification. It's almost time to go to press. The woman's purse is sitting right there, and Aggie's like, fine, I'll go in. And she goes in her brown wool dress, and she gets the woman's identification, and they make it in time for deadline, and she burned the dress.
Brown's Cleaners in Santa Monica will get rid of that smell. Brown's Cleaners is the only dry cleaners that will actually get hard to get smells out. So that's going to be September. I want to thank everyone for coming. Did Paul, I think Paul, our first speaker is downstairs. Paul's around. I want to thank you. I'm going to go have a quick cup of tea and we'll get started for the tour. If you're here for the tour, sign in right there. I have two copies of the sheets, so just, you can double up.
What if they're not on the list?
If you're not on the list because you signed up after 10:15 this morning, which is when I printed it out, just print your name and you'll be fine. And we're very excited. Okay. Good. Thank you, Carl.